Here's a statement that's just going to make everybody kind of, well, I want to say frustrated, but actually probably make a lot of people mad, and probably some decent arguments against what I'm going to say, but hear me out and consider these things. Sports are not exercise. What is an exercise? Well, it's just about getting tired. Is that really it? Is there a specific benefit you're hoping from getting tired? Because I'm not arguing that if for some goals getting tired might be useful. But what really specifically do you want? And do we think that way? So what if exercise, why do doctors recommend exercise? To improve your health. You're a diabetic. You're headed towards heart disease. You need to start exercising. You're a diabetic, you need to start exercising. All these recommendations from doctors. Is this the sport, this lady, when she's told to start getting more active, should she start playing football? It's a ridiculous picture. I think it's actually kind of hilarious and good marketing for the ad campaign they're working on here, but it's true. And there's a specific population that can tolerate exercise. I don't know any 60-year-old NFL players. People typically retire fairly early from sports. And consider this. The whole reason we have a thing called sports medicine is because of this thing called sports. It is so consistent enough that that people playing sports incur crummy forces and poor progression, right? You haven't done anything all year. Let's start 2-a-days. Let's run 5 miles. Let's hit each other in the head. It's a culture, and that culture is going to think I'm silly, but if that's the case, then don't listen. I'm talking to people with some sense out there and don't have the same goals or the same tolerance. But guys, exercise is supposed to be the medicine. It's not supposed to require medicine or surgery, right? Really, if you think about it, the athletes are glorified and honored if they sacrifice the body for the score. If we were trying to be healthy with exercise, we'd sacrifice the score for the body. So you're running for the goal line and you feel your hamstring's going to tear and you stop it and say, I'm not going that extra 20 yards. Yeah, that guy would be shot in the head by all the fans, right? Priorities. Why are you doing this thing? So it's important things to think about. So I had this experience one time where I started wrestling, 9th grade or whatever. And I don't know, it wasn't that good. Kind of started late because all these other guys had been at the YMCA since they were 7 years old or something like that. But you know, when you kind of start working out and you kind of start getting bigger and more muscular for your age group and based on the era, and not a lot of people were doing it back then, coaches start going, you should come out for football, you should come out for wrestling, you should. And I'm like, ooh, somebody wants me, you know? So that's nice. So start wrestling, do okay. And then, you know, a couple of years into that, after a knee surgery, and back then they didn't have scopes, it wasn't arthroscopy, it was an open knee surgery to just take out a meniscus, right? But then you spend 6 months recovering from that thing that could have just as easily been opened up enough to put a joint replacement in there, which is what it kind of led to. But fingers jammed all the time, swelling, all this stuff, and you know, like that's cool in the beginning, you're a tough guy and everything. But a couple, 3, 4 years of that, some version of intelligence kind of takes over and you're like, you know, with the 4-hour practices every day, I don't feel like exercising anymore. How did I start this wrestling thing? From working out, from enjoying the process of developing this God-given machine here. That was the fun part. And so maybe you called that fitness, maybe you called it a version of bodybuilding, maybe you call it a version of health from that age. But the point is, I started thinking, why am I every joint swollen? Why did I start this? I didn't care about wrestling. I didn't even care about competition. I cared about this original thing. And so I said to, you know, the guy that was on the A team, on the B team, which probably saved me some too, I don't know. But I said, you know, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. He's like, well, there's a friend back then after a couple of years, you know, of this everyday stuff. And he said, why would you quit? I said, I just want to work out. I just really love working out. And this is actually a deterrent to working out. And it's not, he goes, wrestling 3 to 4 hours a day, that's a workout. I said, it's not the same. I have specific results I want. And that really long workout doing the skill of wrestling, I'm not saying it's not challenging. It didn't produce the same results. What's the goal of this activity? What's the goal I want from my exercise? I got to be healthier to do this thing. I think I'm done with this. I think this was a phase and it was cool and I'm glad I learned it. It was a great experience, but I have goals and this ain't it. Here's the next response. Why would you even exercise if it wasn't for a sport? And I didn't even know at that age, I didn't know how to answer this. Because I was like, I just told you, because I have different goals. Didn't seem to register with him. Here's an interesting thing. That guy, great guy, I don't think ever did anything that looked like exercise or activity after we graduated from high school. That guy right now is about 320 pounds and has been working on that and actually, investing in that newfound weight that ain't muscle. But it's kind of a heart attack waiting to happen is what I'm wondering. So why do I need to exercise? That's it. Now here's what some people say. Exercise is boring. I just can't exercise. I don't want to exercise. So I'm going to go play basketball. I used to like basketball. You see, that's when they were 18, they liked basketball, and they were tolerant of basketball, and they were very active prior to even playing basketball. Some degree of even preparing for it in that way. And even with what the coaches did to them the first day of practice and with no preparation, they were tolerant of being beat up like that, right? That's the benefit of being a kid. It's why they take 18-year-olds in the Army and not 28-year-olds, right? So, because you can get shot in the gut and let's go do some push-ups. So, yeah, now this person that was 18 and loved basketball is now 30, 35 and has gained a whole bunch of fat and lost a whole bunch of muscle. But their way to get in shape is to go play these pickup games or get involved in a little, evening league once a week with some buddies and start playing basketball again. There was a period of time, I don't know if it's still true, where the number one orthopedic injuries in men between 30 and 50 was Achilles tendon tears. And almost exclusively across the board, at least as it was related to me by an orthopedic surgeon, was that it was primarily associated with basketball in the evening, those just pickup games or the little league thing. Fun exercise. It's really kind of like, I guess you could look at it that you must prepare for the forces of basketball. I know it's fun, but at some point in time you got to grow up. Kids do stuff that's fun to their own detriment. Adults, theoretically, figure out that if they're going to do this thing, there's some preparation for it, or maybe there's another way. Maybe there's a plan B that's better. Let's look beyond that. Well, if you did think exercise was boring, there's a solution for you now and for the past few years. What if fitness was fun? So we've got this thing called the sport of fitness. Now that's a really interesting thing, because what they basically do is turn exercises, which by the way are sports, clean and jerk, I don't know where the tire flipping came from, but it seems kind of cool. So we have these things that are visually attractive, that are really attractive to people that are excessively aggressive, and that are highly tolerant of the thing. And yeah, it's fun. They like that. They like the competition, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that the idea that this is for everybody and that, that you should compete and call that fitness. It's kind of like saying this is the competition of health. Everybody bring in your blood work, and if you've got the best cholesterol levels, you get a trophy. And you think that sounds dumb, but if fitness was related to health at one point in time, it is now related to sports, it's gone two different directions. And if you got a demographic, you take these polls, and if they're serious, and if they're good, and if they're thorough, and if they're viable, 10% of the American population actually goes to a gym regularly and actually exercises regularly to some degree. Well, what's the other 90% doing? Well, they're maybe intolerant of some of these things. They're intolerant of the current delivery system. They don't need someone who loves basketball saying you should play basketball. So these different cultures of what we should be doing and what we're calling things, we need to segregate, we need to discriminate in the sense that not everything is for everybody. And for those of you that think exercise is boring, part of the problem is traditionally exercise, lifting weights, being on treadmills, all that stuff was done mindlessly in a very just do it manner. Thank you very much, Nike. It's not about just doing it. To some degree, you could say it's about just doing it right. It's about quality more than quantity. And one of the things you notice is that boredom's alleviated when the mind becomes active. All exercise should be mindful, not mindless. So there's a lot of things that are built into this. And if you remember, this all started with sports are not exercise. And I hope that to some degree offered you some considerations. And I'm not telling you not to play sports. I know that you wouldn't listen to me, and I never am trying to tell in general people what to do. To me, everything is very specific to the individual. It's about being client defined. And so, I'm going to look at Betty White and say she's probably not going to play football. And you would go, duh. And I'd be like, well, then why are we telling everybody that that's a version of exercise? Just something to think about.